Right then, the very first lesson I'm going to give you in this talk is this. Take control of yourself. Take control of your person. And no matter how highly you are hyped, hype yourself. Hype yourself. Some people call it self-adulation. Some call it arrogance, pride, blowing your own trumpet. Don't really care. I think the most important thing is blow your own trumpet. Nobody can introduce you better than you introduce yourself. It's not self-adulation, it is fact. You know your facts better. So you thank the introducer and you go into it. And this is what I'm doing. I'm saying thank you to Amy Wande. Thank you for the Africa Sports Network for this opportunity and for the introduction and the hyping that they have done over the last few weeks. But here's me. My name is Tunde. Tunde Adelakun is my name. In full, it's Ayotunde Adelakun. Some people call me Tunde. Some just say Tun because it's easier. I like it. And many just stick with the Tunde that is there. And I'm Tunde for short. And who is Tunde? I'll tell you what I was. Tunde was an aspiring football player. He tried to play football. Tunde was a sports journalist. He reported on African football in print, in the newspapers, in magazines, and in all manner of print media at the time. He broadcast as a television producer, presenter, anchor, correspondent. Tunde was also all this on African football. His specialty was African football. I was also a football marketer, selling and procuring rights to matches in African football still. Became an African football ambassador, campaigner, lobbyist, and a little bit dabbling into the politics of football in Africa as well. For a few years after journalism, became an African football consultant for the likes of the Football Association in England, and was also a member of one or two committees on the African Football Confederation, which we know as CAF. I was a member of CAF committees for some years, I think up till now even. I think so, yeah. And yeah, that's my past. Currently, I'm the assistant to the head coach of the Nigerian senior national team. Some call me the full-time assistant. Some say it's the first assistant. Some don't even want to hear the word assistant at all, in which case, by appointment or by the head coach, his name is Gernot Rohr, by the way. Gernot Rohr made me his first assistant, his full-time assistant, the head scout of the Nigerian national team, and the welfare manager of the Nigerian national team, the Super Eagles, we're called. I've been in this role for about 4 years. It'll be 4 years next month. And in this role, we have played a few matches up until this COVID thing took over. We played a few matches. We've won quite a few. I think it's been remarkably successful. It could have been better, but it was not. Been to the World Cup in Russia in 2018. That was about 2 years ago. And went to the Africa Cup of Nations about this time last year. We were preparing for our first game in the Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt. Oh, I'll show off to you. We came back with a bronze medal. There we go. Now then, that's my role in the present and my role in the future, the way I see myself. I see myself staying in this role for as long as they want me. We've just signed a new contract for another 2 years. Hopefully we'll last that long and we'll be able to go to a second World Cup. But then moving on from there, I'd like to also continue in my role of inspiring and encouraging progress and development and growth of the African in African football and in African sport. I want to use developmental techniques that I have acquired over the years to see how we can bolster and make African sports even better, to actually improve the quality of our youth, the living standard of the African. I want to use my words through motivational speaking, through inspiration, my words and my experience of over, I'd probably say 40 years in football world, to inspire the next generation of Africans, and even the current ones, who probably have missed out on one or two things in the past. So I have gone over my past, I've gone over my present, and I'm now in my future. But there's one word that is very, very common in all those things that I have said. That single word is not football, no, it's Africa. I don't live in Africa. I've been living outside of Africa for almost 30 years. I was born in London, by the way. But then I went back to Nigeria with my parents. Didn't have a choice, didn't have a say in the matter. Said, pack your things and go, and we had to follow them, as you do. So basically, Africa is common. I am passionate about Africa. I'm passionate about the development of the games in Africa, development of sport in Africa, football in Africa, and the people of Africa, the youth of Africa. I'm actually passionate about it. Where did this passion come from, you would wonder? For someone who apparently was born outside of Africa, and that, I blame my dad. My father, God bless his soul, God rest his soul. I think it was him. He brought me into Nigeria, along with my siblings, and planted us in a house that was not too far away from a club that I ended up starting to idolize, starting to really love, called, in those days, it was called the IICC Shooting Stars of Ibadan, Nigeria. Now Shooting Stars, they got rid of the IICC a bit long ago. And we lived there, and my father followed IICC Shooting Stars. And that's where the dream started. I call it dreams because you will see that the title of this talk is about realizing your dreams. And dream is very, very important, apart from the Africa bit, of course, because that's where my dream started. And that's where my dream aligned with Africa. How? My baptism in football, as far as following football, my baptism in football was in Africa. ICC Shooting Stars. The first thing I remembered getting to Nigeria and watching was ICC Shooting Stars playing in the quarterfinals, semi-finals, and the final of the African Cup Winners' Cup competition, and winning the cup, becoming the first club from Nigeria to win an African club side title in 1976. Many, many years ago, I know. That just tells you. Now then, ICC Shooting Stars won that cup. I was still young. I didn't know a lot, but I remembered that. I remember the fact that everybody idolized that team. That team now became a team of heroes, history makers, pace setters, trailblazers, and there was nothing they could touch, the players, that they didn't get. If they wanted it, they got it. In fact, I remember the government gave them a car each. A car for a player at that time, it was something. They got a car, and it was one of these old Volkswagen Beetle cars, and it was good. But what did it do to me? It awakened a dream in me. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to also wear with pride the blue and white shirt that ICC Shooting Stars wore and have my number on the back and be scoring big goals and winning the African title. I couldn't even remember that Nigeria had a league and that there was a local league to play as well. No, I was only thinking Africa. They won the African title, and left to me, I think ICC will be winning African titles year in, year out from 1977 till today. That was my dream. I wanted it, and I wanted to be a part of it. I saw the way that the players were being made to feel, the crowd, how they were mobbed everywhere they went. And I wanted to be like that. So I did everything I possibly could within the circumstances. I did everything possible to try and become a player of ICC Shooting Stars. But alas, it didn't happen. There are so many factors that I could blame, that I could put my finger on and say, it's your fault, it's your fault. I did so many. And I'm not going to go into it now because number one, we don't have the time, but also number two, because I've learned to live my life without blame. So let's go with the fact that I just wasn't good enough for ICC Shooting Stars. I think we'll go with that. I wasn't good enough for ICC Shooting Stars, so I didn't make it past the first post. And therefore, I couldn't be that player. I now had to go and regroup. Chasing your dreams. My dream was to become a football player. So many people out there, you and a lot of other people, will have a dream. When you have that dream, you think that you're going for it, all guns blazing, you're going gung ho. However, it doesn't happen. You don't go past the first post and you give up. And you think, well, maybe it's not for me. And then you go into something else. Now, that's one thing I did not do. I went to school. I carried on in school, chasing a career, like a schoolboy, like many others around me. The football was done. I was still trying, obviously, but it just didn't come together. It didn't. I tried. However, obviously, I was studying. I studied to become an estate surveyor, but the football dream was still here. Now, before I go on, I'm going to tell you that there is something about life. I have written about it many times, and I'm going to tell you now. You see, the words starting with F, the letter F, plays a very important part in the life of a human being. The only one everybody says, to me, they're talking and they say, oh, Sunday, that guy used the F word. And I call them and I say, which F word? Because I don't know the bad F word, but I know many good ones. One was my focus. I was focused on wanting to be a football player. My ambition, my dream was fixed to be a football player. However, in between, every now and again, you need to reappraise. You need to self-appraise. You need to stop and take stock of what you're doing. And if you're doing it well, great. If you're not doing it well, be fair. There's another F word. Be fair to yourself. Accept it and be flexible. And that's what I did. I was flexible. I became really flexible with my ambition and with what I wanted. My dream was one thing. I now had to turn it into an ambition. And this was my ambition now was, okay, so I didn't make it as a football player. So the dream that I had many times of scoring this great goal and lifting ICC Shooting Stars to glory and me being mobbed by people all the time, that didn't happen. But I'm still going to remain in football for as long as I possibly could. And this is it. Set, you have your dream. There's no point having a dream. I can't dream to be Michael Phelps, top swimmer, multiple Olympic gold record holder in the swimming pool, when I know that I won't even survive in a bathtub. I can't even swim to save my life. So I had to reappraise and realize that, okay, I can't swim, so let me do something else. Same with the football. I can't play, but I love the game. I'm passionate about the game. And because I'm passionate about the game, I want to move into something different. And I really, really want to remain in football. So I now transformed my dream. I transformed my dream into an ambition. Dreams are vague. Everybody has a big dream. You dream, you sleep 365 days a year. Obviously, if you're a dreamer, you will dream every now and again. So dreams are there all the time. However, ambitions are more focused, are more fixed, are more direct. And I made that ambition, that conviction to remain in football. So what did I do? I started hanging around the ones who could play, who made it past the first post and are now players of Shooting Stars. I started hanging around the stadia, waiting for any opportunity. I couldn't play, but I could analyze the game, for God's sake. Can you please come and talk to me? When I look at media people, television stations, reporters and that, everybody going around and analyzing and talking and asking questions and interviewing people about the game of Shooting Stars that just happened, I'm there holding my head up, thinking they'd notice me so that they can come and talk to me and I can tell them what I know. That happened a couple of times, thankfully. But then again, it wasn't enough for me. I went back, I rejigged. I started writing. I wrote about the game. I wrote about games that I watched. The Shooting Stars games that were going on, I was writing about them and sending them to my local newspapers. They weren't quite local at the time, big national newspapers, but based in Ibadan, the city where Shooting Stars was based. So I started writing to them, giving my opinion, writing the odd column and the odd article, praying and hoping that they will see and use and publish my work. Every now and again, they did. And it gave me that sense of fulfillment. No, I couldn't play, but I can write about you guys. And I moved on from there. And I continued to grow. My writing got better, self-hype, self-adulation, as you say, but fact. I started playing game with my pen, writing with my pen, and making things happen through my pen. It was pen in those days because we didn't have the computer and that. And my work was being seen. Slowly and gradually, it was being seen. And then the time came, I graduated from school, became an estate surveyor, had to go work. But I didn't lose my passion and I didn't lose my ambition for the game. I really wanted to remain in the game. Then eventually, as was the plan, after graduation, I had to come back to England to settle down. Came back to England, and I think my mother, God bless her, would have heaved a sigh of relief, thinking, oh my God, thank goodness, he's gone now. Maybe now he can focus less on football. Because I was a football rebel in my day. I gained admission into a higher institution, into a tertiary institution once before, refused to go, although I made the grade, because it was too far away from my beloved Shooting Stars. My mother didn't know what to do with me. But having said all of that, I'm sure she heaved a sigh of relief when I decided that I was coming back to England. At least finally now, he can concentrate on being a surveyor and leave this thing about football. But the dream was there, the ambition was there, the passion was there, the focus was there, the flexibility was there. And I was determined to make it. So I remember sitting around, I'd started working in the Inland Revenue, the taxman's office in those days as a surveyor. I remember sitting down one day, the Olympics were going on in 1996. God, long time. 24 years, isn't it? Yeah. The Olympics were going on in 1996, and Nigeria was in the Olympic Games. And Nigeria was doing well. I remember having to stay up all night because the Olympic Games were taking place in Atlanta, in America, which was a few hours behind us in England here. So I had to stay up all night to watch the games live. And there was Nigeria getting to the semi-finals of the Olympic football tournament. They won it. Getting to the final. They came from behind, by the way, beating Brazil. They had many big stars. Getting to the final of the Olympic football event, coming from behind again, and beating Argentina. And for the first time ever, Nigeria, an African nation, became the winner of a global tournament, the Olympic Games football event, winning gold. I was proud. I was happy. I mean, I'm Nigerian. And therefore, the next thing that came to mind was a lot of these players, these Nigerian players, play their football in different places, in England, in Italy, in Spain, in Germany, in Holland. So I had this brainwave, and I remember writing a letter. There were no emails. If there were, I didn't have one. So I had to write a letter and sent to the BBC. I said to the BBC, I believe that with the contribution of Africa in the world of football today, we just won Olympic gold, don't forget. We've won a few under-17 competitions in the past, and a lot of our players are playing and donning the shirts of Premiership clubs in England. So why can't we have, and this was me, a regular program on African football on the BBC? In hindsight, I laugh at myself. But then at that time, I thought it was a travesty that this hadn't happened before. That we did deserve to have a program, a regular program of 30 minutes length on African football. You would wonder where this is going. I got a letter back from the head of the BBC. I'll never forget that. He took the time and wrote Tunde and said, it is a bit of an ambitious one to expect to have a program on African football on the BBC, but I promise you, we will look into it. Speak to our head of content and head of production or whatever, and he will guide you. And that was enough for me. I was happy. Spoke to the head of production, and he took me in. He took me in, and I started becoming the producer and regular contributor on African football matters on BBC Television Grandstand. They also had a magazine at the time. We called it Match of the Day magazine, BBC Match of the Day magazine. And they gave me a spread, a 2-page spread every week on African football. We called it Out of Africa. No, I lied. Every month. Well, I've been able to keep up with that every week. But every month, Out of Africa, with my face on the pages. My ambition was being realized. I wanted to stay in the game and I wanted to get to the highest level. I was fixed. I was focused. I faced facts. I was fair to myself and my ability. I was flexible and I had favor and I had fortune. Did you count all those F words? Was a bad one there? No, because there's a lot of good in the letter F. And I found favor and I found flair. And I was still able to express myself in African football. And I was proud. And that's how the journey started. And I wrote and I presented for the BBC, moved on from there to ESPN, to SkySports in England, and then to SuperSport, where I co-anchored Soccer Africa, which is very famous these days, as the man based abroad, bringing in information, bringing in news from the Premier League, from the Bundesliga, from World Cups. As a journalist, I attended 3 World Cups and 5 Africa Cup of Nations competitions as a journalist. When I had enough of it, I got that thing, fate. and favor calling on me again. And the Football Association in England called on me and said, come and work for us. As our international relations consultant with speciality on Africa, we need your advice on what happens in Africa. We need you to come and do your stuff for us and pretty much enlarge our image in Africa with international development programs that we took to various countries, Lesotho, Malawi, Botswana, Somali, Nigeria, Egypt, so Angola, a lot of places. And I joined there. While I was there, I took advantage of one or two coaching programs that the IDP allowed for international people. So the IDP is called the International Development Program. And basically, as a means of helping the African countries develop, every now and again, they will send for a few individuals to come over to England and take courses, some in management, some in refereeing, and some in coaching. And I held on to the coaching part. I took advantage of it because I obviously was also responsible for recommending those who came in from various parts of Africa. And I expanded my knowledge of the game. I realized at that time that my heart was not cut out to be a head coach. I mean, not long before, not long after that, we had one or two head coaches in Liverpool and that having a bit of heart palpitation and issues. Didn't want that. But I still wanted to remain in football. My focus was still the same. I wanted to remain in football with a lot of flexibility. I'd done the journalism. I'd even published. Didn't remember to tell you that. I bought New African Soccer Magazine. I started New African Soccer Magazine. I published the magazine for years. I had enough of it. And then I moved into this politicking with the Football Association. And from there went into CAF, which is the Confederation of African Football, and did all I could to just make sure that I remained in the game and that I still continue to satisfy my passion for African football. And I stayed in it. I stayed in it. I did my work. I did everything I could, helping Africa, helping countries like Rwanda, Kenya, Namibia, Nigeria, of course, Ghana, some, helping them as much as I could to grow in stature in football. I did the consultancy. I did the scouting. I was more interested in scouting. I was more interested in, the era that Jose Mourinho brought into Chelsea in the mid 2000s, 2005, where scouting became a thing. How do you look at players? How do you get the best out of players? How do you look at the opposition with a view to using the best of your players to counter the best of theirs and neutralize them? Mourinho brought that to England. And I was a disciple of that principle. So I stayed on it. And then 4 years ago, I got the call. Nigeria wanted a coach. My very good friend, Amadou Pinnick, is the president of the Nigeria Football Federation. Great guy. Amadou Pinnick called me and said, get me a coach. I got him a coach. My job was done. I'm a consultant for him. I was his special representative in international relations matters, in FIFA matters, CAF matters. And so my job was done. But alas, no. Coach comes, he arrives, and he looks at me and says, after they had discussions with the Nigeria Football Federation, he looked at me and said, Tunde, you do have some qualification, certification in coaching? I said, yes, I've got a bit. I'd like to take this job, but only if you come with me. I mean, I know a lot of people still have a problem with this, but would I say no? Who would say no? Number one, I'm a football fan. Football's my hobby. Football is my life. Number two, I'm Nigerian. And number three, I was called upon to come and do it. I think it'd be unfair for me to say no. So I said yes. And the journey began. I started working as a scout, scouting our players, Nigerian players from all over. It's not something I hadn't done before. 10 years ago, 2010, I did it for the same Nigeria, but in an unofficial role, helping to qualify Nigeria for the World Cup of 2010. So nothing new in me doing it again now. Only this time, I had a focus. We also had to qualify. We hadn't qualified for 2 Africa Cup of Nations prior to that. We had to qualify for the next one. And we had to qualify for the World Cup. We did both. Qualified for the Africa Cup of Nations, and we qualified for the World Cup with a game to spare. And we qualified for that World Cup. We went to that World Cup. We came back. Yeah, it wasn't too good, but we did what we could, and we learned from past mistakes. This is where I am today. I'm going to show off again. Highlight of my coaching career, I got the bronze medal from the Africa Cup of Nations this time last year. Chase your dreams. Actually, identify your dream, the dream that is meaningful. Don't dream about walking in the air or walking on water and go try it. Don't dream about jumping off a roof thinking you're going to land on your 2 feet, because that's not going to happen. But where your dreams are realistic, where your dreams can at least stay close to reality, please follow it. But every now and again, take a stop, pause, and appraise. When you appraise, see where you are. Look at your abilities. The F word comes. Be fair. Be fair to everybody around you. Be fair to yourself. Be fair to yourself that, can I do this? Am I actually the kind of person who can do this? If you are, carry on. Keep going, keep going, keep going. But be flexible, another F. Be flexible in what you do, in your decisions. I was flexible with mine, but mine was even broad. Mine was broad because obviously I wanted to be a player. I couldn't be a player. There are a lot of people who wanted to be players. They were players, but were not what they wanted to be. Petr Cech, goalkeeper at Chelsea Football Club, and now performance director of Chelsea Football Club. Petr Cech started his football as a midfielder. He was playing outfield, passing the ball around. I'm sure they fell short of the goalkeeper. They were short in numbers one day and they told him to go to the back. He became a goalkeeper and that was it, stuck. John Terry, former captain of Shooting Stars, former captain of Chelsea Football Club. Same thing. He was an outfield player playing out there. I'm sure he would have had lots of dreams of himself scoring this wonderful goal as a striker because that was where he was playing. But then again, a coach saw him and turned him into a stopper, as a defender. So his dreams were to be a striker. He worked towards being a striker. His dreams changed, his ambitions changed, and he became a defender. My very good friend Didier Drogba went the other way. Didier was actually a defender because he had the build and he could stop. And then he didn't make the cut somewhere and somebody humiliated him and said he wasn't good enough at all. When he was to emerge a couple of years later, he was up front, banging in the goals. Today, Chelsea legend, Ivory Coast legend. Flexibility is a thing when you actually have ambition. Those who are not flexible, those who are fixed, they think that the world is over the moment they can't make it in the way they molded themselves through their dreams, through their ambitions. You will chase your dreams. You will chase your dreams. You will turn your dreams to an ambition, but you will do it with flexibility in mind. You will face facts. You will be fair to yourself. You will be focused, but you will be flexible. And then you can hope. And if you're religious, you can pray for fortune and favor. Once you do all of that, you will get to where you want to get to. It may not be the way that your dream started. You may not be the player that everybody was rushing and mobbing when you score great goals, winning the African Cup. Let's face it, I tell you something, in England of today, there are 4 million registered football players. There's only 92 clubs. 55% of those clubs have foreign, 55% of the players in those clubs are foreign. So the remaining 40% are British of 92 clubs. I don't think we have up to 2,000 high-level football players in the whole of this country, but we had 4 million registered. We can't all be what we want to be. But this is a world that has 500 million square hectares, 500 million hectares of land, or square kilometers, what am I saying? 500 million square kilometers of land mass, 7 billion people. The world is big enough if you create an oyster for yourself and continue with your ambition, with all those F words that I have used. There is one thing, noises around you. You know, when I was young and I wanted to become a player, people make their noises around me saying, you can't, you shouldn't, you wouldn't. What are you doing in football? I remember my Mr. X's son is now becoming a medical doctor. Mr. Y has, his daughter is now a lawyer. So why can't you do one of them things? What's this with your football? There are noises. People make these noises and try to put you off your dream and try to put you off your ambition. And this is where you need strength. You need strength, inner strength within yourself. You need to actually be confident that you have chosen a path and you want to take that path for as long as you possibly can do. You want to remain in the, I wanted to remain in the game, regardless of what was going on. Up until this day, up until today, there are still noises around me. There's still noises as to leave what you're doing, you're not good enough for what you're doing, or you're too good maybe. You're not good enough for what you're doing, you shouldn't be doing it, we don't want you there and all that. There will always be noises. But do not let them noises shake your resolve. Your resolve is to do well, is to satisfy your conscience that you're doing everything right as you know and as right as you can do. You satisfy yourself that you're being fair to everybody, fair to yourself, and you're not doing anything untoward towards anybody. And I think the rest is history. You will get there, you will succeed, you will be fine. And this one, I'll now leave you with something I thought up about my F words. You dream, you face facts, you develop your dream into an ambition. You're fixed. Your ambition is fixed. My ambition was fixed. I was determined to stay in football regardless. I was fixed. I was focused. I was focused on football. My dream, my ambition, my activity, everything was football. But I was flexible. Can't be a player, so I stopped. I was flexible. I tweaked things a bit and decided to become something else within football. When I got to a point where, you know, as a journalist, it gets to a point where, I mean, I don't know what people are going through at the moment, but for me, I started getting tired and fed up with having to sit down and wait for some football player who was probably a contemporary or even younger, who tells you, I'll give you an interview, please wait for me. And I'm sitting down 1 hour, 2 hours, waiting for this guy to come and talk to me. And at some point I got bored. And I thought, no, I'm not going to keep doing this. But then you're not going to send me out of football. So I changed again. I was flexible. I did what I could to continue in football, but in the way that I wanted to. I was in control. I decided when I stopped being a journalist and I moved to what was next, and I moved to the next thing. From being flexible, I needed fate. So I was in the right place at the right time in some cases, which is why the Football Association found me. That was how they found me in the first place. I was at the right place at the right time. I needed fate to put me in the right place. But sometimes you direct fate. Yeah, we talk about fate, but you direct fate and you put yourself in the right place. And you were in the right place at the right time. And you had favor and fortune. All F's. Favor and fortune. Which meant that at every given time, I was in the right place at the right time, and I was doing what I was expected to do. And there was someone who was finding a way to show favor towards me and towards my cause. So I was favored. And from being favored, I had flair. It was my game. Football is my game. Football is my life. And football is something that I have. That's another F word, football itself. And that's something that I had a lot of fun doing. I had a lot of fun as an aspiring player. I had a lot of fun as a journalist. I had a lot of fun politicking and rubbing shoulders with the big guns of football across the world. I had a lot of fun, and I am having a lot of fun in this role as Super Eagles assistant to the head coach, head scout, welfare manager. I'm having fun. And even trying very hard to derive fun from the noises around. Because as you know, Nigeria is volatile, there's a lot of opinions everywhere, and you still have to sit down there and have fun and grow stronger with adversities. You grow stronger, you make yourself stronger, you go back to the first F, be fixed and focused, regardless of the noises around you. And you just try and stay focused, fixed, and have fun. Because at the end of it all, when it all comes down to it, and you do everything that you do, and you do what you can, and you satisfy your conscience that you are doing the best that you can for your country, for your continent, I'll tell you something, you will be just fine. Another F word. You will be just fine. And that's what I'm going to end today on. I think everybody can learn a little thing or two from this life. A life of someone who is contented and happy. Happy with his achievements, happy with what he has done so far, happy with what he knows he can still do, and that he is me. But make that he or she you as well. Make good use of those F words and continue to remain focused on your life, on what you want. Chase your dreams, turn your dreams into ambition, and you will be just fine. Thank you very much. I will now entertain questions if there are any. I think I've got a few come up. Samuel Benileke says, how about us that aspire to be football representative? How do we aspire to harness talent with clubs? Football representatives, which we call football intermediaries at the moment, there are also, we call them agents in those days. It's an area that I don't dabble into too much because there's a lot involved in it. But the most important thing is that you need to take the exam and accreditation and certification with your country. Assuming this is Nigeria, with the Nigeria Football Federation, and then put your word across. You need to go and become a talent identifier. Identify talent so that you will be able to approach clubs with players that you know. You first of all need to get the representation agency certification. Then secondly, you want to be able to go and speak to players that you can represent them, but then build your own network of contacts so that the players that you approach will actually be interested in you. Thank you for your question. Says, what route should we take to achieve similar or even better career results for aspiring journalists? In my day, I charted a course of cliche. I wanted to be unique. I remember when I first joined the BBC, just a very short story. I remember when I first just joined the BBC and I said I wanted to do African football and I did write a few pieces. First thing they said to me was after a few weeks, because I had a few disappointments, every now and again I'll go and feature a big story from Africa. And then I come back to England with my story and it's been put on the schedule that it will come out next Saturday. But then Alan Shearer probably trips over a stone and breaks his toenail. And because he's Alan Shearer and he's English, he becomes more important than my story. I went all the way a few thousand miles to go and get this story. And I can't even get it seen on TV because Alan Shearer chipped a stone and probably broke a toenail. So they now called me and said, do you know what? We understand your frustrations. Can you please start doing things outside? Maybe go and cover some non-league football in England, so that when you're not doing work as Africa, you're still working. And I said, no, I'm not interested. The first thing you need to do in order to achieve better career results is be focused, be fixed. I was fixed on Africa. Nothing was going to sway me from doing what I wanted to do in Africa. And not even the delights and the perks that came with going to watch Premier League football where no African football was featuring didn't entice me. I wasn't interested. I only wanted to do Africa, Africa or nothing. That's the very first thing you need to do. Carve a cliche for yourself. Pick up something that you want to do and practice on it and start being good at it so that you become an authority at it. Becoming harder these days, but it's not impossible. And back to Cyprian still, what is the reason why African teams have failed to win the World Cup despite our players shining all over the world? It's a story for another day, Cyprian, because it's a long one. We will get there, but things have to start from the top. The players are doing well, but we also need everything to work. We need the infrastructure, but we also need the administrators. Now we need the administrators that can actually harness these players. Because you're right, we've got the players. They're rub shoulders with the best in the world. So how come we cannot have teams that will go globally and do well? Let's start from the administration. The administration of football at the very top. Those are the ones who employ the coaches. And the ones who employ the coaches who now bring the players together, and the thing they put in the players' heads. I have known many players who play top football in England and in Italy and in Spain. When they get to the national team, the training program that they do with the national team, the training sessions that they do, they laugh because they don't get the same back in their clubs. The administrators have to learn to employ the right people. We need to empower the right people, give the right training to the right people, and we will get there. Um, Ronald, what have they been doing as a nation that we as a footballing country can learn from? I don't know which country you're talking about. If you're talking about Nigeria, I'm hoping, then what are they doing? They're trying very hard to get it right. Trying very hard to get it right. Any country that is doing well is trying very hard to get it right because no one knows it all. The biggest country in the world as far as football development and growth is concerned is Germany, as far as I'm concerned. It's Germany. And Germany is the benchmark of greatness as far as football is concerned. What are they doing? They're developing their infrastructure, they're developing their youth, they're developing their personnel, their coaches. You know, it's one of the cheapest countries where you can go and get a coaching badge. It's just that you won't get it because unfortunately there's a long waiting list. They have so many coaches in Germany. And we need more of that down in Africa. Now, to Jason says, how can one access opportunities within international federations? What opportunities exist within the FA or within CAF? You need your national association. You need to go into your national association and try and show them what you can do. In 2008, I think it was, 2008, in spite of my experience in the journalism area, in spite of everything, I remember going to the Nigeria Football Federation with a blueprint on how to qualify this country for the next World Cup of 2010 because they missed out on 2006. They told me what I could do, and I told them, they asked me what I could do, and I told them what I could do. Number one, you need scouting. You need a scouting network, for God's sake. You've got 3 good teams, Kenya, Mozambique, and Tunisia in your group for World Cup qualifying. And it'll be a travesty if you don't qualify. So you do need to scout. The then president of the Nigeria Football Federation accepted, and I worked for them. I worked for them because I went with a blueprint of what I can do. I didn't just go and say, I need opportunities. Can you give me opportunities? What opportunities exist here? I went and I told them what I could do, and they took it on. 2003, while I was still a journalist, actually, but already having interest in coaching, I remember going to Rwanda, and I spoke to the guys in Rwanda, the Football Federation of Ferwafa, and I said, do you know you can actually make history and become qualifying for the Africa Cup of Nations of 2004 for the first time in your history? They said, how? I said, watch me. Let's see what we can do. I can help. I can help. And I helped. And I did what I could with the then coach, Ratuma Edrikovic, and the president of FERWAFA at the time. I showed them what I had. They embraced what I had. We won 2 astounding games, Rwanda, I mean, one in Kampala, and beat Ghana, the almighty Ghana, beat them in Kigali, celebrated. And it remains on record till this day that I was hoisted and taken straight to the front of President Paul Kagame, by the president of Ferwafa, saying to him, this was the guy who did it for us. You need to know what you're going to do. You need to know what you're going to do, and then they will obviously follow you, and they will take your opportunities. I want to say thank you to everyone for this wonderful opportunity. I will be happy to take any more questions. You have our Twitter handle, you have our Instagram. Africa Sports Network is there for you. You can link up with me through them or through me directly. All the social media handles are there. It's been great interacting with everyone at the moment. I intend to do a lot more of this because I believe that the bedrock of success is knowledge. The bedrock of success is knowledge. You talk about education. Education is great. You go to school, you learn. But the key thing sometimes is that you need further education. That further education is in knowledge. Knowledge through experience. Knowledge through knowing people and knowing what they have done. And I would be happy to impart some of that knowledge onto people coming up because I believe very strongly that Africa has the potential. And this is not limited to football alone, it's limited to across all sports. We have got the potential to actually be world beaters. This is the only continent that I know that can survive single-handedly without relying on anything from outside. If we harness our resources, harness our brain, our energy, our intellect, I think Africa will be great. Thank you very much once again. Africa Sports Network, thank you. Amy Wande, thank you. To everyone who have listened to me so far, and I'm sure I will see you again soon. God bless.